Welcome back. This piece analyzes the political strategy of the Kaplan protest movement, specifically its use of rhetoric, comparing the situation in Israel to the regime in Iran.
It's a very potent submission. And I have to say, the documentation of the quotes and claims is, well, it's rigorous. The main opportunity, I think, isn't in adding more facts, but in deepening the analysis. We need to shift from what is being said to why it matters.
Okay, so a big part of that is how the movement adopts specific language, right? Like using the word azadi, Persian for freedom, and these direct warnings from, even Knesset members, calling the coalition fanatical and comparing it to Iran.
Exactly. And that leads to the first major point. To maximize impact, the material should transition from merely documenting the comparison to really dissecting the precise point where the analogy's extreme dissonance, just breaks down.
You mean it's not enough to just say they're making this comparison?
Right. The focus right now feels a little heavy on just establishing the existence of the analogy. But the real meat of the critique is in analyzing the rhetorical cost of doing that. The cost of equating, domestic political maneuvering with a genuine life-and-death struggle against the Ayatollahs.
I get that, but I wonder, for the reader, won't drawing such a stark contrast risk, sort of minimizing the very real fears the protesters are expressing about their own government?
That's a fair point. But I'd argue that imbalance is the story. That failure of proportionality is the key significance. The analysis needs to frame the act of comparison itself as the movement's main structural weakness.
So strengthen the piece by creating a really dramatic contrast.
A dramatic contrast between the reality for Iranian protest, we're talking executions, state violence, and the frankly hyperbolic demands being made in Tel Aviv. Frame the comparison itself as the core failure.
Okay, so it's not just about the comparison being there, but why making that comparison is ethically and practically a losing strategy for the movement's message.
Precisely. And the material gives you the perfect tool to do it. You could, for instance, cite that demand to overthrow the dictator without election.
From the Haifa protest, right? The one that says that dictatorship is overthrown in the streets.
Yes, and you need to pair that immediately with the activist's own admission, which you've noted, that the Jewish dictatorship's iron fist is not yet clenched enough.
Putting those two side by side, that really highlights the gap. I mean, if the iron fist isn't clenched, then calling for a street overthrow it's just pure hyperbole. It feels completely disconnected from the reality of the people whose language they're borrowing.
That disconnection is the analysis. That's what you lean into. And it gets even more stark. There's an even more powerful, I'd say, disturbing example right in the material.
You're talking about the claim that the Kaplan protests are the source of inspiration for the Iranians?
Yeah, the claim, from a political candidate no less, that these protests are inspiring Iranians who are, and I'm quoting here, shedding blood and counting bodies.
Wow. Yeah, that specific quote, it feels like that's the analytical breaking point for the whole argument.
It is. It has to be. This isn't just political exaggeration anymore. It's a kind of cynical appropriation of mortal suffering for, domestic political theater? That's where you need to apply serious, sharp analytical pressure.
So ask the hard questions.
Ask the hard question. Is the movement so convinced of its own crisis that it believes its Saturday night marches are inspiring people who are facing down execution squads? You have to probe that. Show how that one claim just destroys the credibility of the entire rhetorical strategy. If you focus on that one moment of, frankly, rhetorical arrogance, the piece is instantly elevated.
That's a big shift. It moves from here's an extreme thing they said to here's why this extreme statement reveals a fundamental dishonesty in their entire position. It makes the whole critique much harder to brush aside.
Precisely. Which brings us to the second big area for improvement. It's about how the evidence is presented. A clearer hierarchy is needed.
Okay.
The material's persuasive strength would be a lot greater with a structure that defines the weight of the sources. Right now, it risks looking like an attack on just a few extreme, peripheral figures instead of the broader movement.
And I think I know the examples you mean. The critique leans on the really extreme stuff like the group Dokor Yona Yavor calling to overthrow the dictator now.
Exactly. And their justification that dictatorship is not overthrown at the ballot box. And then the warning about an Israeli Beji coming to kill citizens.
That's explosive stuff, for sure.
It is, but the weakness is structural. The analysis jumps from a general comment by a Knesset member about a religious coup straight to these calls for, a non-democratic overthrow. Clustering only the most extreme examples lets opponents just dismiss the whole thing.
It's an intellectual escape hatch, isn't it? They can just say, oh, that's just a tiny minority, a few crazies.
That's the perfect way to put it. an escape hatch. And the goal here is to close it. The way to do that is to show the logical connection. Reorder the evidence.
How so?
Start with the mainstream stuff. Use the high-profile comparisons, the warnings from Yeshatid about a dictatorial coalition. Use that as the starting premise. Then introduce the fringe figures as the specific, dangerous, and frankly, logical outcome of that initial framing.
So you're saying the mainstream rhetoric doesn't just exist alongside the fringe stuff. It actually creates the permission structure for it.
It absolutely does. It sanctions it. You need to explicitly define a group like Dokoryona Yavor as an extreme Kaplanist marker, as the source material itself notes, and then use their quotes to show the slippery slope. The existence of that violent extremism proves the toxicity of the initial, more palatable analogy.
And we have to talk about the weight of that vocabulary. The besieged, explicitly comparing Israeli forces to the besieged, the Iranian group known for brutalizing protesters, that's not a casual choice of words.
Not at all. It signals an intent way beyond normal political opposition. If they're invoking the besieged, they're preparing their audience for civil violence. The material needs to structure the argument to show this chain. If the coalition is truly a dictatorial regime like Iran, that's premise A, then logically the only action left is immediate, non-electoral overthrow and preparing for a besiege-style suppression. That's conclusion B.
That clarifies the relationship perfectly. It's not just documenting extremism anymore. It's analyzing the political consistency. If you accept the premise, you have to accept the radical conclusion that follows.
And that makes the argument far more robust and much harder for people in the middle to dismiss. Okay, let's move to the third area. This is about the specific targeting of certain parts of Israeli society through local organizing.
Right. The material has some pretty concrete evidence here. The ad warning about rabbis Avichai Zaken taking over the city of Tel Aviv, and that workshop introducing residents to the activities of Tehran Nuclei, the religious activist groups.
Yes, and the ad that explicitly warns Tel Aviv is being conquered by religious people.
It's clear fear-mongering.
It is, but the analysis needs to go deeper. Moving beyond just documenting fear-mongering, the analysis has to drill down into the tactical, political weaponization of these community activities. Right now, the material correctly identifies it as fear, but the critique kind of stops there. It misses the chance to analyze the specific mechanism used to generate that fear.
The mechanism. So what exactly should we be focusing on?
The critique needs to analyze how completely non-political community engagement, the work of these Tehran nuclei, is rhetorically reframed as a hostile occupation or a conquest of a secular city.
It's the difference between seeing a symptom and diagnosing the actual cause. We need to look at the strategy of localizing the fear.
Exactly. Explore the implications of it. What does it mean when you characterize social act, volunteering, community center as being equivalent to a military threat? Why use the language of conquest for community development?
That's the rhetorical choice that needs to be deconstructed.
It's the core of it. We have to look at the political utility. Is this strategy effective for political gain by, tapping into existing secular anxiety? Or does it end up alienating people by relying so heavily on demographic fear?
So we can dig into that rhetorical choice of equating community work with a hostile invasion.
And use the ad itself as the focal point for the analysis. Analyze why they use specific names like Avichai Zaken and specific groups. This isn't abstract fear. It's targeted. It's localized. It creates a very tangible target for the anxiety of those frightened Tel Aviv residents.
Because it makes the threat feel immediate, local, personal even. It's not some policy debate happening far away. It's a perceived invasion of your own neighborhood.
Exactly. It weaponizes demographic anxiety for political mobilization. If the material can analyze that tactical shift from general ideology to targeted insight with names and places, it will really deepen the reader's understanding.
That's 3 very actionable points, and they all seem to focus on strengthening the material's analytical depth rather than just its documentation.
I think that's right. The documentation is already excellent. The real power now is in the analysis you apply to it.
Okay, let's recap the key takeaways then. So, to strengthen this, the focus should be on 3 areas. First, more rigorously dissect the rhetorical cost of the Iran analogy. Really contrast the Kaplan hyperbole with the reality in Iran, and hit hard on that source of inspiration claim.
Second, build a clear hierarchy of evidence. Frame the fringe voices, like the ones talking about the besieged, not as outliers, but as the logical, dangerous conclusion of the mainstream rhetoric that closes the escape hatch.
And third, provide a deeper, mechanism-focused analysis of the localized fear-mongering. So really dig into how non-political community work is rhetorically reframed as a hostile military conquest, and why that specific targeting is so potent.
Yes, those refinements will make this critique of the protest movement's methods far more robust, logical, and ultimately much more impactful. This is already excellent work. With these adjustments, it'll be even more persuasive. Please take these suggestions, and we genuinely welcome you to submit the refined piece back for another look. We look forward to seeing